Racist cops arrested a black man at University Gate. Next day, he's the judge presiding over their hearing. On a quiet evening at a prestigious university, a black man in a crisp suit tried to enter through the front gate. But instead of being welcomed, he was cornered by flashing lights, cold commands, and rough hands. The police accused him of trespassing, ignoring his calm explanations, and humiliated him in front of students and staff. What they didn't know was that the man they were dragging away wasn't just another passerby. He was someone with more authority than they could imagine, because the very next day, the same officers would walk into a courtroom and find him seated on the judge's bench. Before we continue this story, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and like this video so we can bring you even more amazing stories like this one. The university campus was a place of prestige, its towering gates and ivy-covered walls signaling success and intellect. Students bustled between lectures, professors carried their books, and the security detail was known to be strict about who entered. On this evening, the setting sun bathed the bricks in gold as a man approached the entrance. He was tall, calm, and well-dressed, carrying himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned respect. His name was Harold Daniels. To most, he might look like another guest, professor, or visiting alumnus, but Harold wasn't there to sit in a classroom or give a talk. He had come to the university for a private meeting, one tied to the community outreach programs he supported. But before he could explain his purpose, flashing lights and the screech of police radios filled the air. Two officers stepped forward, suspicion etched on their faces. They questioned why a black man was standing at the university gates, demanding identification in tones sharp enough to cut. When Harold tried to calmly explain, the situation escalated. Passers-by slowed, whispering as they watched the confrontation unfold. Phones came out, recording the moment. The officers dismissed his explanations, accused him of loitering, and finally pressed him against their vehicle as though he were a criminal. Students gasped, faculty members averted their eyes. In that humiliating instant, Harold Daniels was treated not as a respected professional, but as a trespasser, defined by the color of his skin. But what no one knew, not the bystanders, not the officers, not even Harold's critics, was that beneath the humiliation lay a twist that would soon turn their world upside down. The arrest spread like wildfire across campus. Videos uploaded online showed a man in professional attire being shoved against a police car, his voice calm but firm as he tried to reason with the officers. The sight was all too familiar. Another black man stopped, doubted, and dehumanized without evidence. The students who recorded it debated heatedly in the dorms that night. Some were outraged, asking how such blatant profiling could happen in their academic sanctuary. Others shrugged, conditioned to believe police must have had a reason. Meanwhile, the faculty's silence was deafening. Harold, though bruised in pride, spent the night at home reflecting. He had endured racism in many forms throughout his life. Subtle slights in boardrooms, whispered assumptions in crowded rooms, and outright hostility from strangers. But this moment carried a different sting. He had been reduced in front of young minds he worked so hard to uplift through scholarships and mentorship. Still, Harold carried himself with grace. He didn't storm onto social media. He didn't lash out. Instead, he prepared for what the next morning would bring. Because unbeknownst to those who humiliated him, Harold Daniels wasn't just a respected community figure. He was a sitting judge in the state's superior court. The officers who arrested him had their own worries that night. Once they learned who Harold was, panic began to ripple through the department. The arrest report they filed seemed flimsy at best, built on vague suspicion rather than concrete misconduct. Complaints from witnesses poured in, and internal affairs took interest almost immediately. By morning, the officers were ordered to appear in court for an emergency hearing into their conduct. When they walked into the courtroom, dressed in uniform but with uncertainty clouding their faces, the air was thick with anticipation. Lawyers shuffled papers, reporters gathered with cameras, and community activists filled the gallery. The defendants were ushered to their seats, their shoulders stiff with unease. Then, silence fell as the judge entered. The room rose in unison, only for gasps to ripple when the man in the black robe took his seat. It was Harold Daniels, the same man they had arrested less than 24 hours earlier. The same man they dismissed as a trespasser, now presiding over their fate. The officers' faces drained of color. Their eyes darted between each other, silently asking if this was real. But it was, and Harold's calm gaze met theirs, not with vengeance, but with the authority of justice. The hearing began, and every word carried weight. The defense attorneys tried to argue that the officers had acted on suspicion, that they had the right to question someone lingering near the gates, but the evidence played against them. Videos from multiple angles showed Harold's composure, his attempts to explain, and the officer's aggressive dismissal of his words. Witnesses testified, students who said they felt fear watching, professors who admitted shame for staying silent, and community members who saw the incident as a mirror of systemic injustice. The courtroom's energy swelled with every account, painting a picture of abuse of power rooted in bias. Harold, seated above them, listened carefully. He didn't reveal his emotions, though inside, he felt the irony. Less than a day ago, they had stripped him of dignity. Today, he held their careers, and perhaps their freedom, in his hands. When it came time to speak, Harold addressed the courtroom, not as a victim, but as a guardian of justice. He reminded everyone that the law was built on equality, that no one was above it. Not civilians, not officers, and not even judges. The weight of his words pressed against the walls of the chamber. The officers, once confident in their authority, sat small and diminished. The gavel struck, and Harold declared that their actions had violated civil rights protections, escalating without cause, and humiliating a man whose only crime was his skin color. Immediate suspension was ordered, pending full review. The room erupted in murmurs. For once, accountability seemed within reach, and the irony was undeniable. Those who had tried to reduce a man to nothing now found themselves reduced before him. The story didn't end in that courtroom. News outlets picked up the case, framing it as a powerful example of racial profiling exposed in real time. Clips of the arrest and the shocking twist of Harold presiding over the hearing went viral, sparking debates across campuses, coffee shops, and legislative halls. For the students who had witnessed the arrest, the moment left a lasting impact. Many reflected on the fragility of justice and how quickly dignity could be stolen. Others, inspired by Harold's composure, began organizing forums to discuss race, policing, and accountability. The university itself faced pressure to confront the biases that festered at its gates. As for Harold, he didn't gloat. He didn't relish in the downfall of those who had wronged him. Instead, he used the platform to remind everyone that racism wasn't confined to back alleys or anonymous encounters. It lived in institutions, in uniforms, in everyday assumptions, and the only way to dismantle it was to confront it. Not with vengeance, but with unflinching truth. The officers faced disciplinary boards, their careers hanging by a thread. But perhaps the deeper consequence was the humiliation of realizing that the man they once treated as invisible held the very power they worshipped. In the end, the story was more than irony. It was a reflection of how prejudice blinds, how arrogance betrays, and how justice, though delayed, can reveal itself in the most unexpected ways. And so, the question remained for everyone who watched, who read, who debated. How many others had been humiliated without ever having the chance to sit on the bench of power? Because for every Harold Daniels who rises above injustice, countless others are silenced. And until that changes, society must ask itself, are we truly committed to equality, or are we content with pretending it exists?